Da da da. We're on, baby. Welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers, founder and CEO of Victory Capital. And on the MHP Show here, we talk about anything and everything that has to do with mobile home parks, operations, all this crazy stuff with this asset class that we love so much. And I love this asset class for many different reasons. You've heard me talk about this on podcasts before, but one of the things that we're going to talk about today and why I love it, because the value add opportunities that are still available in this asset class, despite the consolidation of the asset class, despite there only being a limited and finite number of mobile home parks in the US, you can't really build them. There are still a lot of value add opportunities. And so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about identifying those value add opportunities and then how you can actually add that value and what some of the steps are to do that. Because it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen with you just coming in and doing that. Now, you could probably go and buy a park that is fully stabilized, but the upside that you are going to get from that may not be as lucrative as identifying and finding a value add opportunity. Because if you're like me, like I'm still in capital multiplication mode. So I want to multiply capital. When I get in capital preservation mode, maybe I'll buy more stabilized deals. But now I still like doing the value add because there still is a lot of those out there and you can add a lot of value really fast. So what is a value add opportunity? Well, value add means exactly what it says, adding value, right? How do you do that in a mobile home park? Why would you want to do that in a mobile home park? Well, as we look at this industry, as I mentioned before, there's still a lot of rundown parks. There's still a lot of mom and pop owned parks where we can go in and add value. It's managed very inefficiently. And I've got stories for days of the inefficiencies on this stuff. So, what do you look for in a value add opportunity? Number one would be, is it a mom and pop owner? Now, a mom and pop owner, yes, they may have their shit together, maybe, a lot of times not, but they bought the park, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So there's a lot of room. Their rents are below market. They're not managing expenses correctly. They're paying Susie at lot 15 30 grand a year, 50 grand a year at a 30 space park to manage the park for them when they don't really need them to do anything. Right? So your first indicator is the park owned by mom and pop. Right? That is a value add opportunity. And what I like to say, if the rent rolls are on paper, that is opportunity for me. I see that. That is a value add opportunity. And from the utility perspective on this same thing, like, can you build back for utilities? That's a huge value add opportunity. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. But as I was talking with the first thing, is it owned by mom and pop owners? And again, that's what I talked about in the beginning, why I love this asset class so much, because there still is a lot of mom and pop owners that we can buy from that they manage these things inefficiently. So I look for that. And after that, the next thing that I look for, because I know that there's going to be mismanagement involved there, is, hey, what's the utility situation there? What kind of utilities do they have? Is it private utilities? Is it public utilities? What is it? What is it? Who's paying for it? We have a park we're literally about to close on. The owner is paying for the cable, he's paying for the electric, he's paying for the water, and he's paying for the sewer and the trash. So all the utilities and even cable the owner's paying for. So where's the value add opportunity there? The electric, I forget what the bills are, but it's, tens of thousands of dollars a year, right? So where's the value add opportunity there? Well, that's revenue that can be turned into hitting your bottom line because I mean, do you pay electric at your house? Do you pay water at your house? Like, yes, you do. You should be responsible for that. Because if you're not paying for your electric, you're not paying for your water, you don't give a shit how much you use. So you're just going to use it, use it, use it, use it, and use it. So there's a conservation aspect of it there. So utility bill back is one thing that I look for. So when we get into billing back utilities, how do we do that? Right? Well, we formulated a policy, and our policy is that, hey, if it's city utilities, we're billing back for it. Like that's what it is. Like we just do. Like we know we're getting meters in there. We're going to put meters that link up into our rent manager system, and we're going to bill back for those things. That's just policy. We don't just not do that. Like we don't think about it. That is policy and what we do. We're always going to bill back for that. Okay. Um, Electric, like in this case, the park where we're buying electric, the owner is getting, all the electric bills, a stack of electric bills, and he's paying for them. Well, we're going to actually turn those back over to the tenants when we close on this park here in a couple of days. So that's going to add a lot more income to the bottom line. And this is before we even do anything. This is just a simple, hey, turn this account over in your name. Okay. Because you'll get killed on utility expenses if you're paying for all this. Right. And again, mom and pop's thinking behind this is that their basis is so low on the park that they don't care. They're making money anyways. Right. But when we buy these parks for, a lot more than they paid for them, then it's different. It's different. We have to add value here. All right. So that's one thing that we do. Now you can bill back for trash. Some people even bill back for property taxes. It just depends. I mean, I know there's some parks here in Florida, some of the older senior communities where they actually bill back for property taxes. One of the properties that we just purchased, this crazy county has this, in addition to the property taxes, they have this fire and rescue thing that we have to pay. And the old owners were actually billing that back to the tenants. And so we're going to continue to do that. So you can do that stuff too. Most people don't get back to billing back property taxes, but that is one thing that you can do to bill back your utilities, right? Um, but again, just to reiterate on that, you're gonna bill back you're gonna bill back your water, you're gonna bill back your sewer, and you're gonna bill back your electric. You're gonna sub meter, you're gonna do that stuff, right? So that's one way you're gonna be able to add value here. Let me fix my thing here. So that's one way, billing back utilities, right? Now there's going to be different laws and things like that in whatever state that you're in that you're going to have to abide by when you do that. So make sure you give out the proper noticing. You're going to make sure that you give out, in the leases are going to be correct. You need to do that all legally, right? So just look in the specific state that you're in to see if you can do that, and see how you have to do that and see what kind of notice you give. But that is always a policy of ours to bill back for utilities. Absolutely. Okay. The next thing you're going to look for in a value add opportunity is the rent below market. Like most of the parks owned by mom and pop are, back to my example in the beginning. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to take, if you're $500 below market, you're not going to be able to get to market in the first year. You're just not going to be able to do it. The market may or may not support that. So you're going to have to do it on a phased approach, right? So you're not going to do it all in year one, but you're going to do it on a gradient, right? And as you make improvements, because you cannot, do these rent increases and things without making improvements to the park. An example of improvements that we do the landscaping, right? We put a nice sign out front. We put white vinyl fencing up. We pave the roads, you know, put fencing around the dumpsters so they don't look at it, make people clean up, right? And actually, the tenants love the aesthetic things, but honestly, what we found is what they like even more is the speed of service. We're about speed of service. When a tenant issue comes in, we want to fricking handle it like that because the old owner did not do that. I mean, we've had an example here where, we actually, just to clean up the park, we brought a dumpster out to, we just had like a cleanup Saturday where we got 40-yard dumpsters out to the park because people had a bunch of shit in their yards that needed to get cleaned up. And I mean, these dumpsters got filled up with stuff, and the park it's getting there. It looks a lot better now, but you would be so surprised. Like, we got messages in on our system that were like, "Hey, we really appreciate you guys, doing that." The old owner never did that, right? So tenants actually love that stuff, right? Because it shows that you care when the old owner didn't do that. So that's how you can justify your rent increases. Like, if the park is a disaster zone, you go in and increase the rents without adding any value. Well, then that's not the right thing to do, because you want this park to be, clean, stable, and safe for the long run. Okay. But that's how you're going to add value. You can, a regular increase on lot rent. Another way to add value, and the one I like the most, is your park-owned home conversions or your vacant park-owned home conversions, because this is a very quick way to add value. Okay. And clearly, why? Because if you have a vacant park-owned home, you can sell it to someone and you can bring those people in at what market lot rent is, because it's a new person. And if they're vacant and they need work, well, you can either fix it or have them fix it. But this is instant value. And the reason why I love park-owned homes, because if the park is $500 below market, but there's 10 vacant park-owned homes, or there's 10 park-owned homes, you can convert those to tenant-owned homes and actually bring the new tenants into those park-owned homes at market, which is going to drastically increase your value. Yes, it's a little bit more work up front. Yes, it's a little bit more of a headache at first, but after you do it, the value you are going to create from that will far exceed, if it was just a tenant-owned home park. So that's why I love park-owned home parks, because I can convert them. And if it's an all tenant-owned home park, it may take me years to get to market. But if it's park-owned homes, I can do it relatively quickly. But it's a lot more work up front, and it can be a pain in the butt, and it's harder to do in a smaller market. So with all those little caveats, and there's more, I would say that. But our policy as a company, we do not keep park-owned homes. We don't. We never keep them. And that's just our policy. Some people love park-owned homes. It's great. It's fine. People have their own business plans, but we don't. That's not our policy. We get rid of them. The next way that you can add value is filling vacant lots. And the reason why I like talking about this one, because I know that there's people that are really good at this. And, most of the parks that we have bought, they haven't had many vacant lots, and we filled vacant lots here and there. And we're working on a few right now that we're filling. And this is a very quick way to add value. A very quick way. But it is a bit more capital intensive. And so if you're buying a park and your business plan is based on, hey, we're gonna bring in these homes, we're gonna fill up these vacant lots, and you don't have the capital for it, well, how are you gonna do it? I've seen people, and I talk with people on Facebook, people in the Facebook group, and they're talking about their first park. They're doing these big infill projects, and they've never done a freaking mobile home park before, yet they're going to infill 40 homes. Well, I don't know about you, but that's going to take capital, and it's going to take time and effort, because what you don't think about when you're doing this is all the other coordination that has to go into it. You got to coordinate the contractors, you got to get the permits, you got to, depending on what the specifications are in that particular municipality, there's got to be a dirt pad. It's got to be this, this amount. It's got to be this wide and this thick. Like there's just all this little stuff that you don't think about. And there's just a lot of coordination that goes into it. But it is a good way to add value. And some of the ways that we've had success is that let's just say you have a Lonnie dealer, someone who basically, wholesales, flips mobile homes. Sometimes they'll find homes and you can offer to pay them. You can offer to pay them to move the home. Like, Johnny, he's a Lonnie dealer and he's found this used home for $5,000 and he wants to come in and rehab it and sell it or whatever. I'll be like, yeah, Johnny, I'll pay for the move for you to come in, because that's going to incentivize him to bring the home in the park, because we know how much value filling up one lot adds. And if you don't have to do the rehab, if you don't have to do the, the selling of the home and whatnot, that is huge value. Because if you just type that into a calculator, let's just say you're in a $600 market, 600 times 12, at a 7 cap, be conservative, $72,000. And if you got to pay $8,000 to move the fucking home in, like whatever. I mean, it's a huge value add play. And, it's something that we do, but it's not easy. You got to find a Lonnie dealer that you can trust. You got to find one that that they can do the work and whatnot. But you can do some of that stuff yourself too. I mean, you can find a cheap home and bring it in and then sell it and have someone else come and fix it, or you can bring it in and fix it, or you can bring in a new home. All right. There's many different ways to do this. Like in this example, in the $600 market, the home will be worth, in theory, or the lot will be worth, in theory, $72,000 a lot. And, if you buy a home for $50,000, yeah, maybe they can get a loan on that and pay you off at once, or, they pay you over time. You're not going to collect that $50,000 back immediately. So I don't necessarily like that idea the best. But in the parks that we're buying, the value add parks, that, a new home is not going to do as great if there's this, immaculate home and all the other ones are, 70s, 80s models, decent homes, but they're not brand new. Okay. So there's just a lot of caveats to filling vacant lots. I do it and we do it. It's just not a main business plan. There are people that do it really well. They have the process down. And then once you do and get the process down, it's probably it's probably really, really profitable. Okay. So vacant lots also, a perfect example, a park that we bought last month, like these ancillary structures and different things. Right. So this park, they had 2 little apartments and a house and boat slips. And the potential revenue on these things was $1,800 from the house, $900 from each apartment. So that's $3,600. And then from each boat slip, probably another $1,200. Right. So that's $4,800 of revenue that the old owners, because they had no basis in the park. Like they didn't even try to lease these up. Bang, we go in day one, boom, 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 and lease those up. We have an extra, we haven't leased up all the boat slips yet, but we've got, I don't know, 3,600, almost $4,000 of additional income just from doing that. Right. And again, this goes back to the beginning, like why I like buying value add parks for mom and pop is because some of these things are just neglected and they don't do because they're making money. In this particular park, the person was given the park. Right. So they had no incentive to lease it up. They had no incentive to do anything because they're already making money. Right. Why go through the hassle to fill it up? Right. There may be storage units on the park. You may have an area. Like we have an area in a park where people can store, boats and trailers, like little pull behind trailers. Right. So you can add value that way. But those are just, some other little things that can help you do that. So we talked about the park and homes and whatnot, vacant lots, buying from mom and pop. This is one that I love the best. And people say, like, immediately you may not necessarily see increased value from this, but like improving the infrastructure and the issues that are there. Okay. Now, our policy on this, and I'm sharing this stuff with you because I'm sharing successful actions and what we've done and successfully, turned around a bunch of these parks, is that the we're going to go in and make the necessary fixes to the infrastructure immediately, because we know if we let it fester, it's going to get worse. We're going to have to spend more money repairing it. And so we go and fix those things immediately. And I think in the long term, that saves us money. Like, you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. Like, for me, I am a stickler on the operating expenses. I'm fighting for every dollar on the trash bill, every dollar on the water bill, every dollar on the electric bill. And I learned the hard way because I didn't necessarily do that before until in my first few parks. And then we learned that, like, hey, we really need to be a stickler on this because every dollar counts. I mean, $100 a month, apply a cap rate to that. And that's what it's really worth, because that's what it's taking from your NOI. Right? So fixing this stuff up front is going to help your NOI. Right? So if we're in due diligence on a park and we find out that there's a bad drain field or a bad septic tank, yeah, it might be okay for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months, but it may cause other problems, right? I mean, if we just keep pumping it or we keep, fixing it somehow, then that's going to cost us money every time that we do it. So I'm big on fixing the infrastructure. If we have to do that. And, all this stuff all ties in together, because if you go and you do great due diligence, you're going to know about all this stuff and you're going to get quotes on it. So then you can bring that money up front. And, you don't have to, go back to investors or be like, oh my gosh, I don't have to, I don't have the money to fix this stuff. So this is super, super, super important. Like, for example, there was a septic issue at one of the parks that we just purchased, but we found this out in due diligence. It's going to be $14,000 to change out the drain field, and a lift station. And we negotiated that into the sales price, but we also brought those extra funds before closing to fix that. Now that we fixed it, in theory, there's going to be less problems there. There's going to be less problems with the septic. So our operating expenses will, in theory, go down. But also, when you go to sell this thing or whatever, the incoming seller, if they are, hey, we've fixed all the septics, we've replaced this drain field, we've replaced this tank, we've replaced this and replaced this, that makes them feel better, and that makes them feel more comfortable coming in to buy it. Versus when you're buying from when you're buying from mom and pop, you got to do all this digging. You would still do digging in the other case. You would still dig, but it just makes you feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that some of this stuff was replaced. Right. And I talked about not being penny wise and pound foolish. Like, yeah, you're fighting for every freaking dollar on the operating expenses, but you're not going to bullshit and band-aid the well fix or the lift station fix. Like, that's a stupid expense to be cheap on. Like, hammer the trash company, right? Hammer them. But fix the lift station, the well, and the utilities and the infrastructure. Fix that stuff correctly so you don't have to do it again. And I know whenever I'm in due diligence, I always find stuff and I always get quotes and I go back and ask for a discount, right? Because these are not my deferred expenses. And I always get in a pickle and a little tussle with the seller because, like, man, that doesn't cost that much. I'm like, dude, I have the invoice right here. Right. And they're like, well, my guy can come in and do this for $2,000. And I'm like, well, sure. But, we're a company. All right. And we do things correct. Like, we get it fixed correctly. Yes, you can have your Saturday septic guy go in there and, put tape around it or whatever they do. And that may work for a little bit, but we don't do that. We like to fix things. We like to fix things right the first time. And then so we don't have to worry about it in the future. And so when we're talking about adding value to properties, it's like, you can do it through your operating expenses, but you can also do it by doing CapEx projects, even though they may be more costly, right? But they're going to help your operating expenses in the long run and your headaches. Because my goal when I get into these parks is to eliminate the headaches. And a lot of the headaches is coming from the infrastructure. Right. So if I fix something right the first time, in theory, I'm not going to have to deal with it anymore because we want to come in and add value. We want to maximize the returns for our investors and then move on. Right. And then once we have the system in and it's moving, then we can, move on to the next property and go rinse and repeat and do the same thing again. All right. And so I think that's just a big thing when we're talking about infrastructure. You do not want to be a cost-saving idiot when it comes to replacing a lift station or a septic tank or something big like that. All right, because it may be, maybe okay now, but in the long run, it is not. Okay, and that will actually provide more value to the residents than you think. It goes along with the other stuff that I talked about. So we have a park right now where they had some issues with the well, the water pressure wasn't great. And so we've been like working to fix that. But we've been fixing it quickly. They were complaining to the old owner for 4 years about it, 5 years about it, however long he owned it. And he never fixed it. Like we're making an effort, right? And so that's even an opportunity for us to go in and be like, hey, this is the value that we are providing. And this is, the new sheriff is in town. And we're going to make it a better experience for them. A better experience because people like that. I mean, you can't even tell me if you like, I love speed of service. I mean, do you like when people get shit done fast and they're like waiting on you hand and foot? You go to a restaurant and they're like, oh, yes, Mr. Vickers, blah, 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 we'll take care of it, blah, blah, blah. So that's how we treat our tenants. We get to the issues quickly and we try to solve them quickly. And the big issues that we don't go cheap on those things. And so those are ways and multiple ways that you can add value to parks. Okay, it's a simple business, right? And we know our business plan. I know my business plan when I go in, right? And if you're new into this business, you need to figure that out. All right, are you going to keep park-owned homes and pay for all the utilities? Or are you going to build back for all the utilities, convert all the homes? What are you going to do? You have to figure out your business plan, right? And I mentioned some of our policies before, but I know when I buy a park, because this is going to help you in your underwriting too. I know when I buy a park, I'm going in, I know we're building back for utilities if we can. I know we're converting park-owned homes to tenant-owned homes. I know we may fill in a vacant lot or two. And I know we're doing the aesthetic stuff. We're doing paving if it needs it. We're doing the fences. We're doing the landscaping. We're putting new lights up. We're implementing new rules so people can clean their stuff up. I know the game plan. There may be a nuance and, there may be an ugly house that needs to be demolished or something, right? But the business plan generally is the same. We know we're going into due diligence. We know we're getting well, septic infrastructure inspections. We're going to get quotes on everything that's needed to be done. We're going to bring that money in up front, and all the big issues, we're going to fix them as soon as we close or, within that first month. Right. And so we're sort of doing some of this stuff simultaneously. Right. Kind of our first mode of action is that we're going in and we're going to make sure that we're converting all the park-owned homes. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to start implementing the CapEx. But while we're doing the park-owned homes, we may be doing if we have to replace a septic tank or some kind of infrastructure issue, and then we get into like the more major CapEx stuff with the roads and whatnot. But you need to have a plan when you're doing this, right? Some people don't like to buy value add parks. And I get that because they can be a headache. They can be a headache. And it's, if you've listened to this show before, the work on value add is front loaded, right? It may be 3 months, maybe 6 months, and maybe 9 months, it maybe be a year. But after that, it's gonna level out, and it's just gonna be like regular park. If you have that business plan and you have that, and you know what you're doing, and you get that park stabilized. Okay. So, this always all goes back to what I'm talking about, like, and what I've mentioned on 1,000 shows. You got to know what kind of deal you want, and if it's value add, which if you're newer in the business, like you're going to have to buy a value add park. You're not going to buy a 300 space, 5-star park in the middle of Clearwater. I mean, maybe if you got $100 million or $200 million liquid and you can go buy that shit, go for it, man. Go for it. It'll be pretty easy. But my guess is in the beginning, you're going to be wanting to multiply capital and you're going to have to go in and roll your sleeves up. And so this is the basic steps I would take. These are the basic steps that I would look for in identifying a value add property and being able to go in and multiply your capital in a shorter period of time. And so, in closing today, these are the things you need to look for. Mom and pop owned, park owned home to tenant owned home conversion. Is the park below market? Who pays for utilities? Can you bill back utilities? And is there improvements that you need to make to the infrastructure that you can, make the park better? Right? So finding out those things is important. And I will say this too. So when I underwrite deals, and maybe I'll do an episode on this one day, like I do throw a little future in there. So if the lot rent is $400 a month and the owner is paying for water and sewer, the numbers are going to look like shit when you underwrite it, right? Unless it's like super cheap. But I would look at that park and be like, I know I'm going to go in and bill back for utilities. I know I'm going to convert these park owned homes, so my expenses aren't going to be 50%. Like they're going to be lower because I know day one I'm going in to convert park owned homes. I know I'm billing back for utilities. So when I'm underwriting and I'm looking, I'm like, okay, I may be around the 35% expense ratio, maybe closer to 40 in the first year because you're going to be higher in the first year for various reasons. But I know that's what I'm doing. So when I'm, even when I'm back of the napkin math here, I'm going to put a little future in it. Like, hey, I know we're going to convert these. I know we're going to get a little bit of a rent increase here. I know we're going to bill back for utilities. So I can underwrite this at a 35% expense ratio because I know that's what's going to happen. Because if I actually looked at most of these deals, like just in place, owners billing back for utility. I wish I could buy a lot of the parks based on the in place numbers, but that's just not how it freaking works these days. I mean, if you did that, there's just very few deals that you can buy right now. Right. And so unfortunately, you have to you got to throw a little bit of future in there. Right. When you're looking at the deals. Okay. And that's one tip I would give you before we get out. So the value add things, and then, next time you're underwriting a deal, think about what you may do in that first year and then look at the numbers. Right? Because it might be easier for you to make sense of, because when I first started underwriting deals, I was just doing it like what was there, what the in place numbers looked like. And the sellers would send me their numbers and I would send them some low ball offer and they would tell me to fuck off. Now I know why. And some of those deals, I'm like, man, I should have freaking, of course, hindsight's 2020, but I should have bought all those deals. And it just comes with experience in underwriting and really refining your deal criteria and refining what you want and refining your business plan, because then you'll be more confident to make these sort of assumptions. If you've never converted park-owned homes in, you know, whatever market you're thinking about buying in, well, you may be less confident in putting a little future in there, right? Because each market is going to behave a bit differently. And so again, it's just going to come with experience. Go buy a damn park, seriously, and then you'll learn, right? Like I just hate to say it, but just go buy one, and then you'll learn, because you're never going to have it all figured out in the beginning. You're never going to have it all figured out. You're never going to know everything. You're never going to know how to respond to the tenant that tells you to screw off and that they're going to kill you. I've been told that before. This guy told me he was going to effing kill me. It was scary. This guy was a little wild. But, like, I don't have a section in my course, or I haven't done a podcast on, hey, how do you respond to the guy that says he's going to kill you? We don't have that. And there's like 100 other scenarios that you can't keep yourself from buying a deal because of these couple things. Like, go buy a deal and figure it out. Obviously, buying smartly in the beginning. Okay. So if you guys have any questions, just shoot them in the comments. We'll have this episode up on Monday, but I love doing these things live. People can jump in and ask questions on different platforms and comment. I love it. You can reach me at Derek@victorycapital.com. Over at Victory Capital, what we're doing is that we're helping 7- and 8-figure business owners. You run a business, you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you're dealing with employees, you're dealing with all this shit every day, but you want to invest in real estate. You want to create wealth. You need to create wealth because inflation is killing your dollar sitting in the bank. Reach out to us at Victory Capital. Send me a DM. And I can give you more information about what we do, but we specifically help those kind of business owners, right? Because I've been in those shoes before, and I know, like, I want to invest in real estate, but I don't have the time and I don't have the energy to handle tenant calls every day. I don't have the time and the energy to be able to answer property manager calls every day, right? So email me, and I'd love to chat with you about what we're doing at Victory Capital to help you with that. And then also, we have our Park Investing Pros mentorship program. Okay. I only have a few slots that are available for this because I can't give everyone one-on-one time. And it's an expensive program, right? But I'm going to help you through every step of the way through getting your first mobile home park. I guarantee you, if you work with me, I'll pull out all the bullshit and say, hey, this is what you need to do to start buying your first park. And I'm going to hold you accountable to taking those actions. Because if you don't, then why are you doing it? Right. So if you want to see if you qualify for that, you can shoot me a message here or on any of the social media platforms. We have, I think, a spot opening up here within the next couple of weeks. So we'd love to have you. And if you just have a general question, you can reach out to me. You can join our Facebook group at Park Investing Pros. And you can check us out on YouTube, all the social media platforms. And anyways, I'm Derek Vickers. Thank you all for tuning in to the MHP show. We will see you all next week. Have a great weekend. Peace.